I might have just mispronounced your name, so I apologize, but I tried my best. She was born and raised in the Philippines, after which she moved to the United States to study chemistry and oceanography. Publishing a book has been her childhood dream, and she is thrilled to share her stories. She is the author of Dauntless and Stolen City. And I am still seeing KM, and I don't know if that's me or if that is everybody.
I think I need to
just see you.
talk.
Oh, good. There you are. Now I see you. All right, take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Elisa, Bonnin, the author of Dauntless, and the only thing you need to know about this scene is that we are in a fantasy world. Our protagonist is a teenager who's just been stood up by the girl she likes. She's kind of upset about that and is probably about to make some really bad decisions. So, Sari looked down at the dark world below. The rainforest looked like it always did, anywhere in the world. She could have been looking out at the view from her settlement or the view from Elisa. It was always the same, a constant, overpowering presence, watching, waiting. She didn't know how long she stood there until she saw the light. Hours maybe, minutes. But when she saw it, she stirred, looking more closely. It was faint, a glimmer in the darkness, but it was bright enough to catch her eye. It winked out almost instantly, making her think she had imagined it. And then she saw it again. It took her a moment to understand what she was seeing. The light was moving through the trees in the world below. It didn't have the flickering quality of a torch or the steady orange glow of lantern light. There was something cold about it, something eerie. It was strange, and her time in the settlement had given her little taste for strangeness. The light gleamed through the trees once more before disappearing beneath the cover of branches. It reappeared again a moment later, slightly ahead of its original position. Sari frowned in frustration. Her fingers itched to reach for a weapon, and she thought about running back to Ishai's apartment for her bow. But no, there was no time. The light was still moving. If she left now, she doubted she would find it again. Making her decision, Sari squinted at the light, fixing its position in her memory. Then she ran back along the branch. On the outermost branches, there were ladders everywhere, and it didn't take her long to find one. She scrambled down it quickly enough to turn the palms of her hands raw and tender. Above her, the great expanse of the city spread out, but on the forest floor, she was alone. Even in the heart of the known world, even so close to the city of valor, people still felt awed about being on the ground at night. Sari felt a rush of fear, but her travels from Elisa to the settlement and then to Pattaya had steadied her. She gave the ladder one last look, making sure she remembered its placement, then ran off after the light. The rainforest was quiet, the only sound the chittering of nocturnal insects and far-off animal calls. She made her way along a well-worn track that led to the city's fields, moving slowly. She tried her best to stay quiet, not wanting to draw attention to herself or to scare the light away. She didn't see the light again for some time, long enough that she wondered if she had dreamed it. Just as she was about to give up and head back to the city, she saw something glittering ahead. Now that she was on the same level as the light, she could see it more clearly. It was a steady, cold light, white tinged with blue. She had never seen anything like it before, and the sight rooted her in place. A ghost? No, of course not. Ghosts were tales for children. Ithim would laugh if he'd heard she'd even thought that. There had to be some other explanation, something rational. Sari crept forward, trying to make as little noise as possible as she edged toward the light's source. It had stopped moving. As Sari drew closer, she realized why. There was a small clearing ahead, where a tree had fallen after being struck by lightning. Two people stood in the clearing next to the hollowed-out husk of that tree, and one of them held the light. Sari scrambled up the roots of one of the bordering trees and pulled close to its trunk, peering around to get a better look at them. The one holding the light was a man. He was older, his skin leathery and hair gray, but he carried himself with an air of command. He wore a thin cloak over what looked to be a simple tunic and trousers. She saw no evidence of armor. His belts were fastened with buckles that gleamed coldly in the pale glow. Sari wondered if they were fashioned out of stone. He held the light itself in his hand. It was coming from some sort of blue crystal, one that filled Sari with a sense of unease. It took her a moment to understand why. The crystal looked a lot like the kind that grew out of beasts. He was talking to someone, a smaller figure with her back to Sari. They were speaking softly, but Sari recognized the low, urgent tones of an argument. The girl had her back to her, so Sari couldn't see her face. But the cloak she was wearing and her style of dress told Sari that it could be no one else. It was Sana. She said something in an urgent voice that Sari couldn't make out. When the man responded similarly, Sari realized what was happening. It wasn't that she wasn't close enough to make out the words. It was that she couldn't understand the words at all. The man and Sana were speaking, and their words seemed to have meaning to them, but they weren't words she knew. It was like she was in a daze and could no longer understand human speech. It was as fascinating as it was unsettling, and Sari found herself leaning closer, trying to hear them better. There was only one word she could understand, one they spoke with enough frequency to give Sari chills. Vethaya. Even without understanding them, she recognized their tone. Whatever the man was saying, Sana wasn't pleased. She was defensive, her shoulders raised and her hands clenched into fists. It was a posture intimately familiar to Sari. She'd seen it in other people her age, people who had just barely passed the test to call themselves adults, people who bristled at older adults treating them like children. Who was the man to Sana? Where did he come from? Why were they speaking like that? Sari pressed herself flat against the tree, trying to shift around so she could get a better look. That was when she heard it, a sound that pricked up all the hair on the back of her neck and made her fight not to run. A beast's growl. Something padded its way out into the clearing, coming to stand behind the man. An Abensit, eyes gleaming in the light. Sari opened her mouth to cry out a warning, but the man did not seem scared. Impossibly, he reached his hand back, and the beast pushed its head into the touch. The man's fingers crept up the beast's head, scratching it behind the ears almost lazily, and the beast let out a pleased, guttural sound. Sari stared, watching as the beast closed its eyes in pleasure, rubbing its head into the man's hand. A thought occurred to her, although it made no sense. It was like telling her the sky was red instead of blue, or that rain fell upward. The beast listened to him, like a pet. Keeping his hand on the beast's head, the man fixed his eyes on Sana. He said something curt, and even though Sari didn't understand the words, she knew the tone. End of conversation. You'll do as you're told. Sana tensed, and Sari thought she would protest more. But then her shoulders slumped in defeat, and she bowed her head, muttering something sullen under her breath. She didn't seem to care about the beast at all. Other beasts padded out of the darkness toward the pair, standing in a semicircle around them. Two were Abedsit, the other two smaller lizard-like creatures that Sari didn't have a name for. How many more were lurking just out of sight? They were all standing around the man, watching him closely. Beasts organized into ranks, waiting for orders like a valor before an engagement. This wasn't just an argument, Sari realized. This was a council of war.